I'm Claire Parker.
And I'm Ashley Hamilton. And this is Celebrity Memoir Book Club, the podcast where we rip apart all the pages and then we Mod Podge them all back together on one big plank of wood that we found in the dumpster, and we go, okay, here's what the book was telling you. And if you would rather read the pages instead of the art that we've crafted, well, you can do that. It's an option, of course. But if you say, no, I appreciate fine works from Claire and Ashley, well, then keep listening.
And from here on out, we are so excited. We want to thank our Apple 5-star reviewers. You guys have done such a great job. Going forth, we will now include and appreciate our beautiful Spotify commenters. Of course, we can only read the usernames where they're visible. We appreciate all 5-star reviews, but we will now be specifically thanking and shouting out our 5-star Spotify commenters.
Yeah, so I'm excited. Where we'll also be able to shout out a metaphorical 5 stars.
Where?
At our live shows.
What? Where are we going and when?
Well, on April 4th, we're going to be kicking off a Memoir Madness tournament where we are going to be picking the memoirists that we've ever covered in Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Oh my God, I love it there. Remember the last time we went? I missed my flight. And then I had a nervous fucking breakdown.
I always tell people when they say something about Toronto, I go, oh my God, I love that city so much that whilst enduring deep stress, I still had a really great time by myself. And that's a sign of a great city, I think, for me to be spiraling mentally that Claire was going to miss the show and maybe we would never see each other again.
I had my dad and Mac on the line and I texted them both and said, if I can't get on this flight, could you come pick me up and drive me to Toronto? Because you guys know I can't drive. And let me tell you, they both were like, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess. I've never once seen something that neither my dad or Mac wants to do for me. They're both pretty happy to help. But let me tell you, driving me up to Toronto just to turn around and drive back home.
On like 3 hours notice.
They did not seem excited.
Random. Anyway, so we're going to be in Toronto April 4th for the start of our tournament. And we are also going to be in Philly April 10th, Washington, D.C. April 11th, San Francisco April 24th, which also was traumatic. I believe last time we were in town, you yacked your guts out, San Francisco.
Oh my God, that's so true. Oh, life hack for Americans with bad health insurance. I had terrible food poisoning and Ashley had left that morning at 6 a.m. and I had a couple hours to kill. And it turns out like when I woke up 2 hours later after she had left for the airport, I had like horrific food poisoning, but I had to fly down to Houston for my friend's wedding and I could not stand up, but I was just like, you got a roly-poly suitcase, Claire. Just lean your little body on your suitcase and let it do the work. But the problem is that they checked the suitcase. So then I had to get to my gate and I crawled, but I made it. And then I said, Claire, you just got to get on the flight. And guess where I went down? End of the jet bridge, baby. I hit the ground so hard. And I actually sat down in the middle of the jet bridge. I sat down and a guy said, are you okay? And I said, I'm fine. Because I thought, you know how sometimes you think you could trick people? And then I walked and I fell to the ground and I woke up. And have you ever passed out and immediately felt better? I came up and I was like, I'm fine. And they just kept being like, well, we can't let you on the plane. And I was like in tears. I was like, just let me talk to the pilot. He'll see I'm good. But here's the silver lining. It turns out the best, most free healthcare in America is in an airport. The EMTs came. They gave me a free IV drip and this thing called like Zofran or something, which cures nausea instantaneously. And then they IV'd me up. So I was actually better than I had been before. I was like better off having passed out in the airport than if I had just slept it off in the hotel. I got on the next flight, good as new, stinky as hell, I will say. I was sweaty. But you showered and I had my electrolytes and I was dancing the next day.
Okay, so I guess, April 24th, we'll be back at Claire's favorite hospital, SFO. and I can't wait to do the show. Then May 1st, we'll be in Chicago, Illinois. And then May 16th, we're going to London. May 18th, we're going to Dublin. And then June 14th, we're wrapping up the tour with the finale, the Tournament of Champions here in our home, Brooklyn, New York.
The Arlo Hotel.
I'm so excited.
I can't wait to see you guys there. Please get your tickets now.
And Claire, if you were to be writing a memoir, what would you title a chapter about last week?
Chill Out, Cub Scout.
Oh, okay.
So I went to New Orleans. Ever heard of it?
Yeah.
Have you ever been?
Not in a long time.
I loved it. It was like my favorite city I've ever visited, I think, in America.
I would like to go again.
I will go again. Every time I couldn't go to a restaurant that people had recommended, I was like, Claire, you'll just come back. It's not that deep. Just come back later. And you know what? I think I would love Mardi Gras because you know why?
It's in the daytime.
Oh my God. Third reason. 1, daytime. 2, parades.
Marching bands?
Literally, my favorit music is a brassy marching band.
And they are.
And a drum line.
They are blowing brass around there.
3, breasts. Could you imagine? Drumline to my left, nipples to my right, sun up high. Now that's the weekend. And that's the weekend you can only get in America.
Ain't that the truth?
They don't have drum lines in Europe, but they do have nudity.
Yeah, they've got breasts. They've got occasional sunshine.
But if they're not bouncing to a tuba, I don't want it. I'm like very rested and energized. So I'm here ready to go. But basically what I learned is, did you know alligators only eat like 10 times a year?
No.
And it turns out they can't even eat until their body temperatures. I did a swamp tour. So watch out, guys. I'm full of alligator facts.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I know.
I saw like 10 alligators. Oh my God, bad news.
Okay.
We are losing a football field of wetlands every 37 minutes.
37 minutes?
And for every mile of wetlands we lose, a tidal wave from like a tsunami, not a tsunami, hurricane, it's up a foot. Like the wetlands protect us from hurricanes.
And then if we're not having wetlands, if we're losing a football field a minute?
Every 37 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm sure it'll ramp up soon.
Yeah. Anyway, so protect the wetlands is very important. But anyway, interesting fact.
Wait, how?
You know, when you go to vote, just like click yes on the wetland. I don't know if they're running like a Teen Choice Award poll, like vote for the wetlands.
Okay.
I think you could actually drop off your old Christmas tree right at the edge of the wetlands and they'll take that as a donation.
And it makes the lands a little wetter?
I think it makes them drier, which is actually, any wetter and it becomes ocean.
Okay.
Right now we're actually, emphasis on the land.
We're trying to keep it boggy.
The wet is wet, but the land is getting wet too. And that's the problem.
So the wetland becomes ocean or dry land?
Ocean, because the salt water gets in there and it's a freshwater wetland. It's like a freshwater swamp.
I thought we were coming in from the top. We're coming in from the outside.
Yeah.
Okay. That's tougher to protect
because you already had your Christmas tree hooked up to your helicopter and now you got to get it on the back of your boat.
No, I was just thinking of what we can do to protect the wetlands. And I thought to myself, oh, well, we've got to keep the lands wet, but we've got to keep the ocean dry.
Exactly.
The ocean is a much gnarlier beast than just...
Yeah, than getting
land.
A couple buckets. You know what I mean? Anyway, so the alligator, he can't, or she, or they... What do I know? An alligator can only eat and swallow if its body temperature is below 72 degrees. So they have this little thing that covers their gullet. It's like a piece of skin or something back there, and it only flaps open if they are warm enough. So you could right now, if it's cold out there, you throw a piece of food at an alligator, a gator, it can't even swallow it. It's too cold. And, they conserve a lot of their energy in captivity. An alligator could live up to 120 years. But it's because they're just fucking chill. Do you know what I mean? They're not wasting their energy. They just go out, they eat, and they just digest, and they sit on a log, and they sun their little bodies. And I think, we give such deference, I think, to the predatory alligator. They have no natural preyers. No one's preying on them except for us.
Oof. I hate that about us.
Part of me goes, well, maybe it's good. Should anything on this planet live without a little fear? Maybe it's good to keep the world going right. Anyway, just a thought. Another thing I have to tell you that I learned on this swamp tour, I went on the Cajun Encounters. I recommend it. Captain Neil. Here's something horrifying.
Uh-oh.
Do you know what the truest threat to people are right now?
Not alligators.
Wild hogs.
Oh my God, wild hogs are crazy, right?
Did you know that a wild hog in its own lifetime could have 1 million living descendants?
Okay. I don't think that's right.
Okay, tell Captain Neil he's a fucking liar. I don't know.
No, I'm not saying right scientifically. I'm saying right morally.
No. It is so funny to me that I'm like, we're at war right now, right? We've all got nukes. We're putting holes in the ozone. The wetlands are getting sopped. You know what I mean? And we're all sitting here being like, drop off your Christmas trees, put down your guns, stop throwing plastic at the turtles.
And the hogs are about to take us all
It's the hogs. We're about to get hogged. There's going to be a hog on my head.
Can I say?
We're going to be surrounded by hogs. And that is a funny way to go down.
Like you just said, I don't think we should be without a predator.
And I'm glad we know fear. But I think the problem is we're not even looking for the hogs. You know me. I like to learn and I like to share. So now you guys know what I know, which is
just chill out unless you're near a hog.
And then you have to kill it because one hog, fine. A million hogs?
And they're all cousins.
You don't want to be at a hog family. Talk about a hog reunion. You know what I mean? You're on the barbecue now.
Those all hogs have a made-up card game that they came up with at Christmas one year, and none of us can understand it, and we can't play, and we can't win.
It's a hog's world, and we're just keeping the toilet warm. Okay, now Ashley. What about you? Last week, we kind of had a bit of a break. We didn't stop working necessarily, but we were geographically separate and I was slow to email. I think you were over here hustling.
I was hustling a bit. I was relaxing.
Isn't it interesting that I feel like what happens is I'll go on quote unquote vacation, which is like I leave town, but it's like we're still technically working. So like to us, a vacation is just not spending, like we're like never more relaxed than when we're apart. It has nothing to do with like the amount of laptop time. And it has everything to do with like not us having to hang out, I guess. It's very chilling.
Well, I think it has to do with the unscheduled time. We didn't record.
That's true.
So that takes up a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And so I went to a spa.
You've never really done this, huh?
No. And I don't know what my issue is. There's something about this mission of relaxation that has always felt, you know how there are certain things that you've just decided you can't have, that you just are like, well, that's just not for me and I'm not allowed. I don't know what it is about relaxing in a relaxation designated space with controlled temperatures that I've decided I can't have, but I've never gone. I've had opportunities and I always am just like too scared of it or something. I don't really know what it is, but I went to a bathhouse and I luxuriated.
Did you like it?
Yeah, it was amazing. I felt like a new person. No, I didn't get a massage.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I could see a massage being hard for you, but maybe it's a good like fear. Like maybe it's a good, what's that thing where you have to face your fears?
Yeah. Okay. So I actually got a gift card to a bathhouse with a massage 2 years ago that I was too scared to use.
Wasn't it for your 30th birthday?
Oh my God.
You're about to turn 34.
Okay, so I finally gathered the courage to use it, and it turns out that they are under construction for the foreseeable future. So that place is not really an option right now. And I said, okay, well, eventually they'll open back up, and I believe in my heart that this gift card will still be usable. And so I'm going to save my massage for that.
You know, I think you would love
what?
A facial.
Yeah, me too. But I've just never even done it. I'm scared.
I'll take you.
To get a facial?
Yeah, my new thing is the facials I was getting for my wedding, I look back and I go, well, they were working. Look at my skin back then. But they are too expensive for me to just keep going. So I've stopped. But now my new thing is I have given to both of my sister-in-laws for Christmas the gift of a girl's day to go get a facial. And that I come to with. So my new thing is being like, well, I couldn't just get myself a facial. That's too expensive. What makes sense is we'll buy 2 facials at once. But that money doesn't count because it's like generosity.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I'll take you.
That makes sense. But anyways, I was like walking through these rooms and at first I was like, this is too hot. This is too hot to be nice. And then I was really letting myself relax. And then I got used to like the hot room and then the cold plunge. And I was like hot rooming and then cold plunging.
I can see that going really well for you because it's a little bit of pain that like, you know what I mean? It gives you something to think about.
And at first I was like, I don't want discomfort. I'm here for pure comfort. And then I really started like breathing into it, like getting into my breath and having a great time. And then I was laying on one of those rocks like a lizard. It was like so nice to just lay on those rocks. I was eavesdropping. I was in Williamsburg, so there was good chat to be heard.
Nice.
It was nice. This one girl, she was sitting there. Okay, so this woman was like fully pregnant. And this other girl was like, oh my God, you're only 33. You seem so mature for your age. And I was like,
that's really mean.
Okay, first of all, she seems exactly 33, if not younger. And like you're saying that because she's like
pregnant,
weeks from becoming a mother.
Yeah. But in some places, people become moms at like 17.
I know, but I like nothing about this person. Like I listened to her talk for a while. I was really basking on a rock right by her. And it really was just that she was pregnant. And I feel like that, you know, offers an air of authority. The conclusion that I came to was, okay, relax a little.
Yeah.
Throw your phone in the locker. Lay down somewhere at a crazy temperature.
Yeah, it's nice.
Should we get into this week's book?
Yeah.
Speaking of trying to find a way to calm down.
This week we are doing Hooked A Memoir in Crafts by Sutton Foster.
If you can't go to a hot or a cold room and you can't become an alligator, you've got to try crafts.
That is until the hogs get you. People have been requesting this memoir for a while. We thought that we knew everything. You know, it's good to be humbled constantly in this line of work where you get a bit uppity up your own butt. You go, I've read 300 celebrity memoirs. What don't I know? And it turns out there's always something to surprise you. We had assumed that this was genuinely like a crafts book. It's not. It's a true memoir. And so to the people I ignored, I'm sorry. And here you go. We are, of course, reading it as spurred on by the excitement of her latest affair with one Hugh Jackman, my 7th grade crush.
How dare she?
Do you guys want to hear something crazy? In 7th grade, we had to do like computer class, right? And we had to do like an HTML section where we had to learn. I mean, we called it coding a website, but it was no different than just HTML for a MySpace page or whatever. And my project was I did an ode to Hugh Jackman. And it was like just like a giant photo of him in a bathing suit coming out of the ocean wet and just like talk about how sexy and hot he was. And like that was my, like, why did I feel that that was appropriate?
What grade did you get?
I'm sure an A.
Well, then I guess that's why you thought it was appropriate, because there was not a single repercussion. And in fact, you were rewarded.
I was always bringing my crushes to class. In 6th grade, we had a class on like marketing, and you had to bring in an ad and dissect it. And I brought in, at the time, my big crush was Andy Roddick, and he was doing a milk ad because, you know, I always been a milk girl. And I got a good grade on that too. I really was like, the thing that's so great about this ad is you want to fuck him. And he's covered in milk. But the thing is, I was right. That is what was so great about that ad. And then turns out that's a lot of marketing.
A+.
The interesting thing about Andy Roddick is he's not that hot to me anymore. He didn't age well.
It's so crazy how the things that you find hot as a...
No, I'm sure I still would have found 2006 Andy Roddick hot. But 2000...
Oh, you're saying current... like you're saying if you were married to Andy Roddick...
I would have been like... If I was Brooklyn Decker, I would have been thinking...
You'd say, we're just not that attracted to each other anymore.
You said our paths have diverged, much like Sutton Foster and her ex-husband, huh?
And then Sutton Foster and her other ex-husband, huh?
But you know who I was dead right about? Hugh Jackman, still hot. Still hot and still available, apparently.
Hugh Jackman does not do it for me anymore. I don't like them when they get taut. I don't like it when...
The Ryan Reynolds effect.
The Ryan Reynolds effect. I don't like it when, even without their shirt off, you can say, oh, yeah, I can tell just from the tip of the neck how much muscle is happening under there.
Yeah, well, you don't like it when you can look and see steroid use, obviously.
Oh, I didn't know he was on steroids. I thought he was just strong.
Pro tip, if a man looks more fit and dense and strong in his 50s and 60s than he did in his 30s, that's steroids.
Pro tip, if a man looks more fit and strong in his 50s and 60s than he did in his 30s, that means he died and became a Wolverine. And I don't know that Wolverines age well.
Wolverine didn't die.
Then how did he become a Wolverine?
Before we get into this book, I will just give you guys lore. I come from a big X-Men family. I don't know if you knew that. So basically, his mutation is that he can heal from anything.
Yeah.
You can like rip him up. So basically what they did was they put titanium in his body as an experiment, knowing that he could heal from anything.
Okay.
So they just did it while he was under general anesthesia, I imagine.
Oof, would hate for that to happen to me.
Well, it wouldn't, because you don't have a mutation that helps you heal.
I actually am a particularly slow healer. Okay, anyway, so Sutton Foster, if you don't know who she is, then you've obviously never watched good television. And I know that she's quite famous for the theater, but I didn't actually know that. I knew about her from Bunheads.
I knew about her from younger, Liza.
I was ahead of you on younger because I knew about Bunheads.
I feel like mostly what I knew about Sutton Foster is that people just love her. I feel like she always comes with a review of like, well, you know Sutton Foster. Everybody's crazy about her. And I'm like, what is she?
Well, she's a theater sensation. I think she's one of the more talented people to ever grace the stage.
I can't even imagine that because she doesn't even sing in younger.
I know, but I think in real life she does.
Uh-huh.
I think in real life, the thing that's different between her character in younger and her person in real life is that in younger, she's like a mom from the suburbs. And in real life, she's an actress and a singer.
She's a big virgin.
She's a big, anxious virgin.
And you kind of get that from looking at her. There's something about even the way she's standing on this cover. If you're on the YouTube, I don't know if you can see that. I just pointed the book cover to you guys. There's something in her. Oh my God, you know what her posture is?
Virginal?
No, who's that young girl who works in the financial district taking down the patriarchy? She's like Brave Girl. You know that statue?
Yeah.
She has the exact energy and cross-armed posture of like Like a defiance that my dad's proud of.
I mean, there is just like a musical theatricality that runs through her veins.
There's something about musical theater that makes you so unsexy.
I will say a lot of this book was so honest and vulnerable. And like, if you are interested in Sutton Foster, which I was, you get it all. There were a couple revelations where she's like, I have anxiety, where I was like, duh. And then when she was like, I was very inexperienced about sex and like relationships. And I was just like, yeah, I don't know. I didn't know who you were until you were like 39 and I still guessed that.
I guess there's something about her that she is such a crafter. The book is technically sound.
Mm-hmm.
It's not at all beautiful.
No.
Everything in this book, on a checklist, you'd give her all checks, but the grade overall is like a B-.
Yeah, I guess this book had a lot of moments that were like revelations. I mean, I guess you look at it and you go, yes, it was very vulnerable. Yes, you like revealed a lot. I don't think I felt very much.
Exactly. It's not emotional. Let's plow in, shall we?
So the introduction to this book, she's talking about the advice that she gives young people. Advice number 1, say yes. That advice can be further explored in My Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes.
Yeah, very similar.
Advice number 2, trust your gut. This advice can be further explored in Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey.
I actually like her trust your gut thing. Because she says, even if others don't agree, in the end, no matter what happens or how it all turns out, it will have been your choice. Own your choices, because even if you fail, your gut will get smarter. But if you follow someone else's gut and you fail, all you learn is to trust your own gut. I'm like, that's so true. Skip the first step.
That's so true. Number 3 is get a hobby. And this is advice that I don't think we've seen before at all. I think most of the memoirs we read are like, dedicate yourself wholly to your craft.
Yeah, she really does say, find something that does not make you money and has nothing to do with your job. And that is actually something I'm seeking out right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. It's hard because in the world of content, every hobby can be monetized or shared. It's hard to like find something that you keep for yourself. I'm thinking a kid. Would that be a good hobby?
Yeah.
This is not a traditional memoir. I wanted to root my stories in things I've made over the years. So the result is an overlapping, not unlike my most recent crafting feat, mosaic crochet. I wrote this book for my mother and my daughter, the first so that I might understand her, the second so that she might understand me.
She moved a decent amount when she was young, and so she starts this book in Georgia.
She talks about her mother, Helen Dale Jackson, who grew up in a one-light town in North Carolina called Chadbourn. She was raised by a very mean man that they call Dada. That's what they call him as a grandfather. He was very rich, a millionaire. He had multiple homes, and he was a fucking dickhead. Till the end.
My mother was 19 years old when she told Dada that she wanted to move to New York to become a model. He said no, absolutely not. So she went to community college, met Sutton's father, and they said, okay, we're going to get married. And once again, Dada was like, no. But she said, well, I'm doing that anyway. So they got married and they moved away, which made her kind of a black sheep of her family that she would dare leave.
When I was in my 20s, I discovered a snapshot of Hunter as a child, dressed up in a housecoat, wearing a wig and glasses. He called the character Bobo. I asked my mom about it, and she clarified that it was in fact her costume. I would dress up in disguise when you were a toddler, she explained in a matter-of-fact way. Why? I asked. So you wouldn't recognize me, she said. What? I was dumbfounded. I was stuck at home with 2 kids, and you wouldn't leave me alone. You were annoying.
Wow.
The crazy thing when you look at these people were just like 19 years old having kids and then stuck there. It's crazy how young people used to have kids.
Yeah. Be careful out there. So she had an older brother named Hunter, and Sutton was energetic. She apparently like could never sit still. And one time they took her to see her brother at like a play, and she was transfixed. And so they said, okay, theater is something that shuts her up. So they started putting her in like local theater companies.
Her mom is always looking for auditions for her, and she finds an audition for The Orphan Annie. I guess it's just called The Annie Musical.
Yeah. The character is called Little Orphan Annie, I believe. I believe that's what
Orphan,
we call
nonetheless.
Orphans.
I'm not wrong. So she goes up and she sings. She has no training. She just knew the song from seeing the movie, and her mom goes, sing all the way to me, sits in the back very purposefully, and then says, don't forget to smile. And I guess Sutton gets up there, gives it her all, and obviously gets the call back. Then she practices all week. She shows up and she gets the role of Annie.
When I think back to my childhood, I see how theater was the happy glue that kept us connected, but not for long.
So interestingly enough, her and her brother were both really big theater people. So that was the thing that it seems like their parents were obsessed with. Her dad loved helping with set design. They would always host like the after play parties. Like this was their thing as parents, was they loved their children to be in musical theater.
I think it gave them something to really focus on. The mom was eccentric, and it was something that kind of came about more and more over time.
Mm-hmm.
She was afraid of like the chemicals on her tomatoes, so she would peel her tomatoes before eating them. She calls back to a few of these moments just to illustrate later when her mom becomes a lot more extreme.
She has a few happy memories of her childhood, but she says she never remembers her parents being particularly affectionate. She doesn't even know what their wedding anniversary was. Like, there was never any discussion of their relationship or their love. As I said, her dad was a big part of her theater world and liked to garden. They had a couple things they enjoyed. Her mom actually liked to crochet. That was like the one thing.
Or cross stitch.
That was the one thing that she ever saw her mom enjoy. But I was in second grade when things in my family took a dark turn. I can pinpoint the moment.
So she goes into her mom's room to ask if she can have a sleepover, and her mom is sobbing, saying, "Your father is going to leave me. He doesn't love me anymore." And she also notes that her mom didn't really like when she had play dates with friends because she says, my mom didn't value friendship. She didn't have any friends. She only talked to my aunt. She didn't really care about other people. And she didn't have like a community around her.
But at this point, this night, when she walks in on her mom crying and saying, "Don't leave me. Your dad's going to leave me. He doesn't love me." Like, everything changed. From then on, my dad started sleeping on the couch, and I began to notice that my mom would pick fights with him over the smallest things, like not taking out the garbage or scraping his plate while he was eating.
Her rage so dwarfed any offense that I started defending my dad, and then she would get mad at me.
Even worse, she started to ice me out. I would walk into the room and ask her a question or say hello. She would completely ignore me as if I weren't standing in front of her.
Then they moved to Michigan, and when they moved to Michigan, her brother goes to college, and her parents have fully separate bedrooms, and they never share a room again.
And her mom becomes very isolated from everybody. When I think back on this time, I now realize it was when my mom stopped cross-stitching and my dad stopped growing things, even tomato plants. All that energy went into finding opportunities for me in particular to perform. The very last chapter is her pitching this book, and she talks about how she realized she wanted to make this memoir like this kind of interesting idea of like, let's look at my life through the things I created at each phase, which makes sense because she's working on these things pretty linearly. Like, she's working on one project at a time, and each project represents like a career stage or whatever. But she starts with the first time she started cross-stitching, which is when she is on the road at 19 years old doing the national tour of Greece as the understudy to Sandy Dombrowski.
So she also, in this part, runs through a bunch of career opportunities that she's had. And she mentions this cross-stitching. She says, "I see how having a hobby gave me something to do other than obsess about the social dynamics around me. The more I cross-stitched, the less I cared what other people thought about me." And she goes into how she learned this, which is her previous experience in the professional world, which she doesn't get into most of it. Her first major professional gig was joining the Will Rogers Follies national tour when she was a senior in high school. She was 17 years old, and she was on the road for a year.
She had lied about her age. This is always the most interesting thing to me when somebody like lies about their age to get a job. I'm like, did you guys not have social security numbers?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm always filling out fucking paperwork. What do you mean you lied about your age? You didn't have to show them a passport or something? I'm always showing my goddamn passport. I'm always sending a photo of my ID.
Like, you're allowed to just say it and then that counts.
After 9/11, things changed, man.
Osama bin Laden. You've made it so kids can't go on tour. She just says this in one line. When she was younger, she auditioned for Star Search and came in second. She lost to 13-year-old Richard Blake. And she also made the final rounds of auditions for the 1989 reboot of the Mickey Mouse Club, which I do feel like that means her life was a lot more stage parented than she really gets into.
She does not see her mom as the typical stage mom.
I don't know. You're not auditioning for the Mickey Mouse Club.
And Star Search.
And Star Search. And any audition that came through town, she was there.
Yeah.
I think that she doesn't consider it because her parents didn't like move the family for anyone's career.
Well, I think in her mind, there's this idea of the stage parent where they're like straightening your hair and making you lose weight and coming to all your rehearsals and watching you and pushing you. But her mom was an agoraphobe. Mm-hmm. So she couldn't really come to the rehearsals and do that dance moms thing where they sit in the room and like watch you perform and yell at that woman, Vicky, or whatever her name is.
Yeah.
Who is that lady?
Abby?
Yeah.
Oh.
Tell me she couldn't be a Vicky.
She's not sharp enough to be a Vicky. So she talks about how she had like had a very sheltered life, but her insular and overprotective mother was the one who not only found the audition for me, but also told me to lie about my age when the Will Rogers casting call came through Detroit in the spring of 1992. Her friends are getting ready for their senior year of high school, and she's getting ready to go on tour for a year. And I do feel like the way it's presented in this book is just like, and naturally, you know, I went to an audition for a national tour, and there I was getting ready to go on that tour at 17. And I feel like there's no acknowledgement of the fact that she's the most talented person alive.
Well, I wonder if at 17 you're still not sure. I think the acknowledgement is that instead of going to high school, she went on a national tour.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't just have your 17-year-old audition for Broadway stuff because you think she's like normal.
I guess to me, the thing that sticks out is I think in a lot of these books where we're reading the book of like a prodigy, it's like a straightforward line where someone says like, you're the most talented person I've ever seen. And for her, the proof is just in the fact that she was always employed and winning Tonys.
I think a couple things are coming into play here. One, I do believe she doesn't know to this day. I believe that she found out at 42, she decided to like embrace her power. And she's like, you know what?
I am pretty good at this.
I'm a talented gal. So I do think that that is part of her nature. I think one, as we'll see, spoiler alert, her mom is a deep agoraphobe with like insane anxiety and is like a crazy person and has created this like insular family unit where the dynamic is like fear at all times. I do think when you're that shut off from the world, there's no sense of like what anyone else is doing that's normal. So like
your experience is the experience.
Well, you go to high school, you know, if you're the star of your senior play and everyone's like, wow, you're so great. And then you go to college and you're like the star of that college, then you keep leveling up and being like, wow, I'm always the best. Let's keep leveling up. But I think if you go from this weird little family to the national tour, then low-key, everyone you know on that national tour is also very talented. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I also think the third weird compounding factor is her brother. Not to, again, spoiler alert, her brother is also a Broadway star. He is somebody that was like the star of many a Broadway show. So I wonder if to her, she's just like, I don't know, if you want to, you just go to Broadway. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do wonder if there's this like feeling in her that she's just like, well, have you auditioned?
Yeah.
Like prep really hard for your auditions. And then much like everyone I know from my town who wanted to become a Broadway star, me and my brother, you all become Broadway stars as exemplified by me and my brother.
Like I do fully believe that she's very out of touch with what's normal. And then also, like when I meet a person who's like, wow, you do comedy, that's cool. I'm like, no, it's not. Everybody in New York City does comedy. That's not actually true. But to me, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like comedians to me are like fucking rats. They're just scurrying along the streets all the time.
And the rats run this city.
I also do think her personality is like, who, me?
Okay, so she goes to New York for a couple weeks to prepare for the tour. Her mom makes her too scared of the subway, so she walks every day to rehearsal. And because as we know, the safest place to be in New York City is walking alone if the subway is too dangerous.
I mean, and she knows this. She's like, yeah, I was walking through Times Square like at dawn being like, I don't know if this is any safer than the subway. She also is scared of, her mom has told her that all the air conditioning units will fall out of the window. So you got to keep your eyes on the sky. Eyes on the sky. AC's fallen. Because you could just come to the city and get crushed to death by an AC. And that has happened to my friends.
Who?
The rats.
I will never sit here and tell you not to be wary of an AC machine falling out of the sky and crushing you to death.
What are you more afraid of, a vending machine or an AC?
Why would a vending machine be hanging from the sky?
Because I read a Snapple Fat Cap that like 2 people a year die from a vending machine crushing them to death.
Well, now that I know that, my eyes are up, they're down, they're all around. I'm on a swivel, baby. Okay, so she talks about being on this tour as a 17-year-old with mostly 20 to 30-year-olds and how it was like very obvious that she was naive.
So she had been raised not at all Christian in terms of like actually going to church or religion or values. But Christianity and hell specifically was a huge fear tactic in our house. So she was told if you have sex, you'll go to hell. If you don't call your mom, you'll go to hell. Everything is going to send you to hell. And her mom makes sure she knows it. And then she gets to this apartment that she's sharing with a couple other women who are on the tour. And they're all in their mid-20s. And she's like, what do you mean your boyfriend's sleeping over? She's like, oh my God, I'm in a hell. I'm in hell.
She asked her mom when she was younger what an orgasm was. And her mom just gave her a book about Christianity and sex that basically just said, don't have sex until you're married. If you masturbate, you're evil. The end.
True. Ironically, this what's his name?
Rogers.
Will Rogers Follies is about showgirls. So on stage, she's 17, a virgin, and like swinging her breasts with tassels and being very sexy. I was selected to be one of the 6 single sisters, which was considered a special role because we added extra numbers and costumes. The strongest singers were chosen, so that was a huge confidence boost. I was out of my element in so many other ways, but I could hold my own on stage. However, one day she comes into rehearsal and she has to switch sides. And she goes into the changing room and she overhears the girls talking about why. And it turns out it's because apparently Julie complained that Sutton was too energetic. Someone else I didn't know laughed. Ha, of course.
I had not yet learned how to control my voice, so each dig hurt my feelings. I had no idea how to respond to the comment other than to dance with less enthusiasm, to sing with less volume, to tone it down. Maybe I should go back to high school and finish out my senior year with my friends and peers. Maybe I would get cast. I mean, of course you would get cast.
So she's on this national tour, which sounds grueling. Take it from two gals who can barely do 2 cities in a weekend with a very easy schedule and a very easy social dynamic of it's just us. And we would be hanging out at home anyway. It is tough. I can't imagine not having a home base. They're doing like 100 performances, not 100, but like they're doing like 8 performances a week, 1 day off. It is tough stuff.
The only thing I think that can make it bearable is 1, being this like young and energetic, and then 2, having a community, like having this group be kind of like a family, which I know a lot of musical theater productions get really high on that, like we're all family vibe. And so the fact that she was excluded from the social dynamic entirely, I mean, she fully melts down, but I get why. You can't be on the road alone performing 8 shows a week and like having no one to talk to at all except for your mom on the phone once a week.
I was recently talking to a girl actually who was on a national touring company. And I was like, wow, that sounds awful. That sounds so brutal. And she was like, no, it's my dream. And I was like, damn, well, I tour barely. And let me tell you, it is running me ragged. And I was like, if I had to do what you do, I would die. And she was like, no, you. And Mac was like, no, she would die. He's like, no, take it from me. She would be dead.
But like, I can see how as a musical theater aspirer, and then you're just like on tour for a year with like all musical theater people doing musical theater every day. Like I get how if you're 24, it's like
so fun.
So fun.
But if you're like somebody who loves comedy and you're doing comedy on the road and you're 31.
But I also feel like for her to be 17, so unaware of the world, like learning everything about how humans interact and also like not being included in any of it, like what she went through sounds like torture.
Yeah. So she also didn't want to tell her parents what was going on. She would put on a little smile and be like, I love it. I love it. I never told them what was going on. My mom certainly would not have understood. Marianne, her sister, was still her only friend, and I started to wonder if, like her, I was unable to cultivate friendships. Even worse, the ways in which the girls would ignore me reminded me of my mom's favorite form of torture, silence. I can't count how many times I'd walk into a room and she wouldn't talk to me or even acknowledge that I was there. I never knew what I had done to deserve the silent treatment, but it could last for days. And it always ended with me apologizing or begging her to talk to me. I couldn't stand the silence. With these girls, I decided to try to wait it out.
So one night on stage, she gets horrible stomach pains and she ends up like on the ground sobbing. And so they take her to the ER and it turns out nothing's like it might have just been a panic attack.
Yeah. I was discharged with, quote, abdominal pain as my diagnosis. And she goes, I don't remember much else, but the ER doctor hit on her. And she's like, okay. So she gives him her number. And then he comes over to her apartment. And she's like, once he got there, I came to my senses. Was like, you have to get out of here. I'm 17 years old. But she would have known. Because again,
he's a doctor with a chart in his hands.
And she's like, what assholes all around, including that doctor. So after that year, she's like, you know what? I can't do it again. I'm going to go to Carnegie Mellon. She ends up going there because one of the girls on the tour, Julie, is dating Patrick Wilson, who goes to Carnegie Mellon. And she's like, he said it was fun. I made it through 1 year of college and another half year of living at home with my parents before I wound up back on another national tour, this time with Greece.
So on this tour, she says she's not going to let herself get so stressed about the social dynamic. So she's going to do crafts instead. And so she learns to cross stitch. And this begins kind of the whole premise of this book where she spends the entire tour just furiously cross stitching.
It's like much easier to be alone when you're doing something with your hands than to be alone, like clearly looking for someone to hang out with. I want to say the interesting sub fact here. At the time, her brother, Hunter, was in Greece on Broadway with his girlfriend, Jen, his current wife. So they were able to teach her all the choreography. And she's like, I think that helped me going into the audition, that I knew all the choreography. So she gets the role as the triple understudy for Marty, Sandy, and Rizzo.
Then they bump her up to play Marty, and she is not nailing it.
I don't know who that character in Marty is.
Me either.
Is she the girl who like can dance? They said she's the toughest, sexiest pink lady. Maybe she's not in the movie. I've only ever seen the movie.
Yeah. I only know Rizzo.
Me too. But anyway, I guess Marty is like a cool as a cucumber sex pot badass. And so she does one night, they fire her. She goes home, cries, is just cross-stitching in bed, like biding her time until she leaves the next day. When she gets another phone call, Trisha, who plays Sandy, is sick. Would you mind doing it? I was fired on a Thursday and rehired on a Friday and was too naive to question any of it. So I said, sure. Of course, she's supposed to fucking be Sandy. She's a wide-eyed, but she is Sandy.
Yeah.
Her personality is Sandy.
Wide-eyed, bushy-tailed
Idiot.
Don't say sex in her direction. She'll freak out.
Look at me. I'm Sandra D, lousy with virginity.
I never thought about it that way. I was an extrovert on stage, but an introvert in my personal life. Much like my mom, I needed this quiet contemplation in order to continue to perform well. So another thing that is brewing around this time is her fear that, like her mom, she just doesn't connect to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is really interesting considering how the later half of her life pans out.
Yeah, and I feel like she's known for being beloved.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that's just like a fan beloved. I guess I don't know anybody who knows her besides my crush, Hugh Jackman, who won't call me back.
Go to www.hughjackman.com to find out how Claire feels about you. http://hughjackman.org.
Anyway, so she uses this Grease time to do a cross stitch where she does like a winter scene for her mom because her mom loves Christmas or something. I don't know. It doesn't matter. The point is she gives it to her mom and she goes, I don't remember giving it to her. And she's only said I love you twice that I can remember. But even though they moved a lot her whole life, in the front hallway of every house, the cross stitch was hung. And she goes, that's like her way of showing that she loves me.
She goes on to talk about some other people in her family. She says cross stitch was her gateway craft. And then she got really into making blankets. She got really into crochet and she made this giant blanket for her grandpa.
So Dada was mean as nails and was always asking her when she'd be done with all this acting and singing nonsense. Still, I sent him letters and postcards for my travels once or twice a month. I wanted to be in his good graces and to stay connected to him and to prove him wrong. I'm like, damn, I can't believe you contacted your mean grandpa more than I contacted like my nice one.
I know, I feel like shit.
If I had a grandpa who was like, you're an idiot and your mom is too, I wouldn't be like, dear grandpa, here's a postcard from my latest revise.
I've made you this blanket.
But I guess as everyone always says, Sutton is better than you.
Yeah, people say that to you a lot, actually.
They don't say it out loud, but I know they're thinking it, and I know if provoked. But if I was said, who do you think is better, nicer, more talented?
So the first huge family rift, and this one didn't strike me as that dramatic because Dada is evil, but the mom and Dada have a falling out when...
What's his name?
I can't say it. Dada?
I agree. I think it's a preposterous.
Dada?
No, I just think it's like a crazy name for a grandpa. Dada. That's what babies say to their own fathers.
Dada?
Dadaism. Keep going. Sorry. That's his name. You're saying it right. I think they're wrong.
Okay. Yeah.
I think
well, he's died, so you win.
To the victor belongs the spoils.
So they're having this like celebration. So Marianne is the mom's sister. Her daughter is getting married. And Marianne also is a great baker and won this national baking contest.
The Pillsbury Bake Off. To this day, you can make her fudgies recipe.
Should we?
Oh, of course.
Okay. So Dada is like basking in all this celebration and he's so happy. Marianne won a contest. Her children are getting married. And then Dada turns to the mom and goes, what have you done with your life?
I bet he didn't say it like that. Say it again.
What have you done with your life?
Yeah. I don't think he was asking a general question. Even so, if someone casually...
Okay, let me spit some tobacco.
Yeah.
What have you done with your life?
Dada, no! No! Dada, that's not right.
She didn't say that. She said, fuck you, I ain't never speaking to you again.
She cut him out. The silent feud lasted until the day he died. That wasn't the only feud my mom had going at the time. Hunter was also in the crosshairs of her ire.
Okay, so the Dada thing, I was like, yeah, fuck that guy. Hunter moved in with his girlfriend, and the mom never spoke to him again. Or not never again, but
for 20 years.
A long time.
So basically what happened is he had done two things wrong. One, he got a girlfriend and she owned a thong bikini. Fucked up. They get married and are like married to this day. So one, she's like, how dare you date somebody? And then they move in together. And so basically she had paid for him to go to college, I think Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And she used some of her trust fund for him to go to college. And the deal was he had to pay her back right away. Instead, with his first gig, he put a down payment on an apartment on the Upper West Side, which Sutton is like, as he should have. What a fucking investment. He paid $115K for an apartment on the Upper West Side.
I mean,
That's a great deal.
it's an amazing deal.
Anyway, she's like, how dare you not pay me back? What was she going to do with the money? She could wait.
He earned a lot of money. He was like a star on Broadway for like 20 years.
So they move in, and she's like, the mother can't believe that Hunter would move in with his girlfriend before marriage. She begged him to break up with Jen, and when Hunter refused, she cut him out of her life. I just finished my freshman year at Carnegie Mellon and was living at home that summer, which meant I absorbed all of her rage at Hunter. In Detroit, it was aimed at my dad. Next, it was dad. Now it was Hunter's turn. I knew that I could be next, and I walked on eggshells every day.
So then she gets dumped, and her mom is very sweet to her. And then that night decides to sit down with Sutton and her dad. This is when she's living at home. And makes the dad tell Sutton that the reason all those years ago they left Georgia for Michigan is because the dad had an affair. And she's like, why do we have to talk about this now? Like, of course, that explains a ton of stuff. Like, why that move was like the entrance of a lot of rage in our home. But why today?
Then she's like, well, aren't you pissed at your dad? And she's like, no, I forgive him. It's fine. And she's furious. The mother is furious that Sutton isn't going to hold this anger. And she's like, I don't know. You've been angry at him for years. Like, but why won't you get a fucking divorce? She's like, why won't either of you leave either of you? You hate each other.
I was so confused why they were still together because they clearly weren't happy. My father never defended their marriage, but he always stayed put. That fall, she goes into a deep depression.
She had paid for her own way to Carnegie Mellon, which was because she was like, I'm not going to get into the pickle Hunter got into. So I knew better than to ask my mother for a loan. I didn't want to go into debt, and my heart was broken. Plus, I feel like my parents needed me. So she starts volunteering at a kids' theater, and then she's working at the macaroni grill. And then her mom finally is like, what the fuck are you doing? Well, first she finds a clown at the local
casino
and is like, do you want to go on a date with this guy? And Sutton's like, no. And then she's like, okay, well then go back to New York. So she circles all these auditions in the theater magazine backstage and said, go to New York. This was the opposite of what her father did to her, and I am so grateful. That was just like my mother. She could be infuriating and petty when it came to how she withheld her love and affection to punish us, but she always nurtured my career, and she knew when I needed a little push.
So she had been asked to fill in for Sandy on Broadway. This was her Broadway debut.
For 3 weeks.
For 3 weeks. Her brother is in Greece right now. So for her Broadway debut, she is going to be sharing the stage with her older brother. And because her mom is so mad at Hunter, the parents don't come.
Can you fucking believe? Can you even fathom not going to see your 2 children on Broadway?
I mean, to not go to your daughter's Broadway debut, to ignore that your son is on Broadway. Can you imagine having 2 like psychotically talented children who are in a Broadway show together for 3 weeks and you can't even get your shit together to go see it?
They do come up. So then a few weeks later, Sutton gets a role as like star to be on some Annie revival. I don't know. She gets some like special cameo role kind of. And so her mom does come see her there. They literally drive up, see the one show, and then turn right around. But around this time, Hunter and Jen get engaged. And when she calls her parents to be like, did you guys get the invite to the wedding? Her mom goes, yeah. And I ripped up the RSVP and mailed it back. And Sutton's like, it would have been one thing to ignore the RSVP, but to rip it up and then get postage to mail it back is crazy.
That is crazy.
That's crazy.
All he did was move in with someone and now they're making it like legit. He wasn't even whoring around. So her dad does come in for the wedding.
And when she calls her mom and is like, oh, you know, it was a beautiful wedding. We had a great time. She goes, the only reason your father danced with you was to throw it in my face, she said, spitting the words in an angry torrent. It was crushing. It was also the moment I began to realize that something was seriously wrong with my mother.
So then Dada is dying. And dude, this dutiful sweetheart.
She's like, I should go down as a representative of my family, make sure he's okay.
So she goes down. She walks into the hospital room. Dada starts screaming. And she's like, okay.
He started screaming for his stepdaughter, Tammy, to come back in. Somehow my presence enraged him. He was literally convulsing, a writhing, angry old man. I thought I was making peace offering by showing up, knowing my mother wouldn't. But now I think it only made things worse. It was so unsettling that I left the room and didn't go back in. That night I stayed with my aunt. I don't recall her explaining his behavior.
My last visit with Dada haunted me. Something about me reminding him of my mother at a time when I was beginning to separate from the hold my mother had on me. Why was he so angry at me? Why did my mom refuse to see her father?
So because the mom's refusing to go see her dad, which I almost understand, he sounds insane, and her mom's like, it's just, these are 2 psychopaths. They can't hang out. Not now. Things are stressful. But because Marianne feels like she has to take on the burden of taking care of their ailing father alone, Marianne and the mom stop speaking. So now Sutton's mother has like nobody, and she sends Sutton an email. They're mostly talking by email at this point. I imagine this is like the mid to late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
One day, not long after she and Marianne had their falling out, I opened up a message from her. I stared at the screen, trying to understand how I felt about her words. You are the reason I was born.
Oof.
So this puts like such a burden on Sutton because now she's like, her mom is completely cut off from everybody. She's like draining the life force out of the father. And Sutton feels like the mother is completely her responsibility.
Then Dada dies and we don't have to say that name for the rest of the book.
Oh, good riddance, huh? I was a teenager when my mother made a proclamation. Hunter will be a writer. Sutton will be a visual artist. What a funny thing to say to your two children that you're both putting into Broadway.
Yeah. So she gets very into, as we know, creating.
She makes a friend named Stephanie, and like Stephanie is her first friend that doesn't judge her and isn't mean to her and like will help her understand things like sex. Stephanie has a boyfriend named David, and they were not living together. They were definitely having sex though. And I was still very much not. I may have even told her that she was living in sin. She probably laughed at me. But she basically says she like realizes now that she had subconsciously connected the two in her mind, that basically her fear of sex came from a fear of the way that her mom cut out Hunter when he moved in with his girlfriend. And that like if she kind of fell in love or had sex or started a romantic relationship, her mom would cut her off too. So around this time, Hunter was in the Broadway production of Les Mis, and they needed an understudy for Eponine.
And she fills in. Once again, she's sharing the Broadway stage with her brother. And once again, my parents did not see their two children on Broadway.
She ends up going on a national tour.
And her mission on Les Mis is to boink.
She does. She has sex. She's 23. She's like, shout out to that guy. He was pretty nice. Good first time.
I will say, I feel like in theater, she's like, there were two straight guys in the cast. I picked one. Are musical theater kids not so horny?
Well, yeah, because it's like there's two straight guys. And so they're like, you know what I mean? They're basking in it.
I guess it's so funny.
Like imagine getting to have sex with Sutton Foster and your qualification was that you were one of two. Like your qualification is that there was a 50-50 chance it would be you.
It's just funny that she's like, my big goal was to have sex. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty easy. You're Eponine on fucking Broadway. She never is like, oh, I discovered musical theater when I was young and it was my goal to someday be on Broadway. There are only a few goals that she ever expresses in this book, and one of them is to have sex.
In January 2000, I decided to leave the tour. I was tired of life on the road and eager to look for my next role. I had also started dating someone in LA and wanted to spend more time with him. So I rented an apartment where I hung a piece. This piece is like a mosaic of a girl where yeah, you guys know what a mosaic is,
It's called
right?
Shattered Girl.
And so it's like a drawing of a girl, but then like mosaicked, which, you know, like you shatter stuff and then you glue it. Each shard of glass seemed to represent a piece of me, from that 10-year-old Annie all the way to the 5'9" Eponine. I thought I was trying to build a fuller version of myself with each character, but now I saw her in a totally different way, not in pieces, but broken. I had created a shattered girl.
So then there's a reading for a new show that's going into production called Thoroughly Modern Millie. She gets invited to be in the ensemble for the reading, and she is obsessed with this show. She auditions for Millie and does not get it, but she's so obsessed with this show and she's been thinking about it since that reading. So she goes, if you need ensemble members, I would like to do it. So they cast her in the ensemble and make her the understudy for Millie. And then she gets offered Les Mis on Broadway. And so then, like, obviously the no-brainer is like, be Eponine on Broadway instead of an understudy. Also, Thoroughly Modern Millie was like testing at this point.
So it was in San Diego. It wasn't even on Broadway. It was like a potential show. It was a test run.
Her agent is like, what the fuck do you mean you want to be an ensemble member of a testing show in San Diego instead of in Les Mis on Broadway? And
I like have so much respect.
I've never seen gut trusting like this since Kelly Bishop.
I guess it's easy to trust your gut when you are very talented.
I wonder because she, it seems, has not had that many roadblocks or detours.
I think the worst thing that's ever happened to her professionally is Bunheads only getting one season.
Yeah, and I do think that when she was 17 years old, she auditioned for a national touring company and got it. And then when she decided to like go back to New York to get back into theater, she was in the touring cast of Grease, and then she ended up playing Sandy for 6 weeks, and then she was Sandy on Broadway. And then I feel like she's never been concerned that like this will be her only chance.
Yeah. This was such a profound lesson. I didn't let my ego stop me. She says, I wanted to be in the room with talented people whom I could learn from. My gut was telling me to do Millie.
In what I just said, I think an actual really important lesson in ego is that it actually was ego that propelled her forward. Like the ego that she wouldn't only have one chance to do like a big Broadway show.
Also because she is so young and has had so much success. She says one of the big things about Eponine is obviously it's huge for your resume to be the starring role on Broadway. But she's also like, it would have made me more money than I had ever made before. It would have catapulted her financially.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really need that much money when you're 22.
Yeah.
So then she's dating this guy, Tom, who's a huge asshole, but very rich. And she kind of like likes being lavished on, but he's always being a dick to her. And she's at his beach house one day in Malibu, and she gets a call that Millie is sick. We need the understudy. You have to be here in an hour. She's 2 hours away. She shows up an hour late, but she throws everything she has at it. Over the next 3 days, I crammed and learned the role cold, all the dialogue, choreography, and blocking. That Thursday, we were supposed to do a run-through of the whole show for the creative team. Erin was still sick, so I played Millie. It was amazingly fun, and I nailed it. I was so proud of myself. The next day, Michael Mayer, the director, called. Sutton, there's been a change. Erin is leaving the show, and the role of Millie is yours if you want it.
So this is crazy. She's freaking out because she's like, is everyone going to be mad at me? Because they've been working together and testing the show together for weeks. Mm-hmm. And now, when you throw the captain overboard, it seems crazy. She embraces it and she is Millie. And then Millie goes to Broadway.
And she is so scared because she's helming the show. She's a complete unknown. And that's how they're pitching her, is like this unknown, newly discovered star. When they offered me the chance to play Millie on Broadway, Tom, however, was even more threatened. And he's like, but you're going to have to move to New York. And he's like a dick to her. And then finally he comes to visit her and is just like laying on her bed. And she's like, oh, we have to break up. I trusted my gut by saying yes to Millie and by saying no to Tom. I wasn't sure what was next for me, but I felt I was beginning to assemble all the pieces of who I was becoming. The Shattered Girl was gone, one of the few art projects I've made that I can't look at.
Her mom is addicted to message boards. Her mom stays connected to her by like scouring theater message boards for thoughts about her and Hunter. And so, when people go on to review performances, like her mom will email her the next day and be like, I heard your voice crack last night. And so then she gets curious about message boards. And that's a dangerous spiral that she goes down for a while that like almost destroys her mentally.
During previews, there was a ton of lead-up press, anything to drum up excitement about the production to sell tickets. The producers were pitching the discovery of a new talent story hard. As a result, in addition to an already rigorous performance schedule, I was doing interviews, photo shoots, and live TV. In the thick of it, I was invited to perform on the Rosie O'Donnell show, which was a big deal. Everyone in the cast and production crew was excited, and I wanted to do my best. She wakes up that morning. She has no voice. She calls her new vocal coach that they got her to help. And she says, you've got this. Use your breath, anchor your body. Your legs are tree trunks. Shoot roots through your ground. Use your entire body, not just your voice, your entire body, your back, your arms, your gut. You have power and reserve within every cell. Use it. So she gives everything she's got. And at the end, Rosie goes, can you say Tony Award?
Wowee.
So something that happens is 9/11.
Oh my God. I always forget. So because of 9/11, the opening date gets pushed. And also because of 9/11, her mom's agoraphobia is now full blown. She's too scared to fly. I don't think she ever does again, but she definitely just cannot get to New York for the opening. So she is opening a Broadway show as the lead and her parents can't come.
However, her boyfriend at the time, Christian, comes backstage beaming, I guarantee the reviews will say a star is born. She said, we felt great about the opening. We thought everybody in the audience loved it. Then the reviews came out and they were mixed. Some people loved it. The New York Times didn't. Somebody said that her teeth are really distracting. And can I tell you something? She has a closed mouth smile on the front of this book. It sounds like that's something she never got over.
Yeah. She decides to never read review again because I will tell you what.
In the past, I had turned to cross stitch or crochet or collage to help ease my anxiety. But this time I started drawing. Christian, who also is a Broadway guy, gives her like a set of fancy markers and she starts drawing. Something interesting about Sutton is that she's obviously like a deeply talented person. She now has like multiple Tonys. She has 2 Best Leading Actress Tonys. She doesn't know the difference between good and bad art. It's one thing to like craft the art that she makes that she then has like shows of. I'm like, why don't you know that this is so bad?
She's just so like sweet and earnest. At one point, she collages the word badass.
She's so close to culture. How did none of it get in her?
I feel like she's so close, but yet so far
but literally, physically, she lives in New York.
And most of the time that she's lived in New York, she's been doing 8 shows a week.
It just seems like by accident, somebody would like let you know that collaging the word badass is like not art for a show. It's art for a cafe in like downtown Phoenix.
And I think that's where it went.
So she starts doing these drawings and she's like, they're doodles, but big. And I'm like, good, cool. They're of the sun because she needs the light sometimes.
And then even though the original reviews for Millie were mixed. The crowds are loving it. They're sold out constantly.
She gives credit to 9/11.
Yeah, she goes, people really needed hope.
Because Thoroughly Modern Millie is the story of, and I've never seen it, I just know this from the book, a young woman who moves to New York City to pursue her dreams of marrying her rich boss. So she's like, basically, because this is like about a young ingenue in New York and the hope and the love for New York City and like everything that can happen here, people really saw it as like the Yankees winning the World Series.
And boy, oh boy, does she start getting awards. She gets a Outer Critics Circle Award, and then she gets a Drama Desk Award and an Astaire Award, and then she gets the memo she's been nominated for a Tony.
Something really fun is that her and her brother are both performing at the Tonys this year because she's in Thoroughly Modern Millie, and he has been one of the heads of Urinetown.
Yeah.
Which was a play that I was in high school.
Really?
Yeah.
What were you?
Like a rabble, like somebody in the back who was like pissing. Do you know the plot of Urinetown?
Everyone's pissing?
No one can piss. That's the whole point.
Oh, that sucks.
The point is that it's like in the future and water is scarce, so toilets have been privatized.
Oh.
So all the poor have to like stand in line all day to go to the bathroom. And let me tell you something about living in Bed-Stuy. It turns out the poor don't wait in line to pee in a bathroom. They pee and poop wherever they so well please. It turns out when there's not a bathroom accessible, you will shit between two cars.
Ain't that the truth? So then she wins the Tony Award. Her and her brother both perform at the Tonys. It's awesome. Her parents are obviously not there.
But at the end of his performance, he pointed at me and I pointed back at him. Two kids from small town Georgia suddenly performing at the Tonys together. Our misfit dreams realized. That is crazy. I am like, why are your parents such freaks? If these were my parents, they'd become insufferable. If my parents had two kids who succeeded in any fucking way, they would be...
Dude, my mom already is like about to buy a headset. She wants to be like rolling calls in some direction.
I just can't imagine my parents not wanting to come to the Tonys if I was up for one.
My mom is like setting up appearances. She was like, I think it'd be really good to give back to the community if when you're in Chicago, you like speak at the local bookstore. And I was like, okay. I will, but I was like, wait, did they want that or did you?
It's just an idea you had.
Or did you tell her? She's like, no, they want you to. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I will. But I thought she like went in there and was like, can we rent this space?
Anyway, she wins the Tony and you'll never guess what. It's like so fun.
Yeah, the only bad part is that her parents won't come. But other than that, they're like so happy.
They did finally come to see me in Millie that summer. I was so nervous. Even though I won the Tony, I still felt like I had something to prove to them. It's so funny to be like, I have to prove to you that I'm good enough to be the star of this Broadway play when you're not even good enough to leave the house. Like, what do you have to prove to them? As Dad pointed out, what did she ever do with her life?
Goddamn, got her.
It was around this time that the producers confronted me about my unsocial behavior and suggested that I host a weekly bagel brunch. So basically the producers are like, as the lead of this show, you kind of set the tone. Right now, the tone sucks. They said she was like a somber bummer and that everybody felt lonely because she's such a loner. So they were like, get bagels and invite people over to your house.
And so then she's like, wait a second, I might be a somber, lonely bummer. So she starts seeing a therapist and her therapist is like, yeah, dude, there's like something actually wrong with your mom. I don't know what it is because I'm not her therapist, but you're right in feeling the way you feel. And also the way she feels is not normal.
She also stops reading reviews about herself and she asks her mom to stop sending them. She says, I begged my parents to do the same, but my mom insisted it was her only way to keep tabs on me and Hunter. Mom, I said, exasperated, why do you want to read horrible things about me and Hunter online? They don't say horrible things about Hunter, she replied.
The difference between being a man and a woman in this world, huh? So Christian is her boyfriend. He's also a Broadway star. And he has like a lovely, warm, joyful family.
They drive down there. She's excited to meet them. They're so nice. They're very, that episode of Sex and the City when like they have perfect parents kind of thing where he's a professor.
Open about sex.
What does she do? She does something cool. He does something cool. They're both like intellectuals. They're always just spontaneously dancing and cooking the most delicious European meal you've ever had.
She finds out about cocoa bean and then they make cookies together. She makes cookies with his mom. And when he comes in and says, what are you gals up to? And she says, making memories. She's so earnest.
And it reminds her of in her early days, her and her mom used to make Christmas cookies and they'd use these copper cookie cutters.
When her mom passed, she ends up asking her dad for the cookie cutters. And at that point, her and Christian were divorced, but like she uses Christian's mom's recipe with her mom's cookie cutters and like makes cookies with her daughter to create this collage of women's experiences in a memory.
What's really hard, though, is she goes and meets Christian's family, who lives on the west coast of Florida. And her family lives on the east coast at this point. So it's only a 3-hour drive between the two. And she's like, don't come meet them at this point. They still weren't even acknowledging that Jen, Hunter's wife, existed. They referred to her, if necessary, as Hunter's spouse. And all gifts and cards were simply to Hunter, never acknowledged Jen.
It's so weird.
It's like, for what reason? Okay, so she's like, instead of coming to meet my parents, why don't you drive me halfway across the state and my dad will pick me up in like a Krispy Kreme parking lot and you can meet him. And she's like, he's the normal one. Of course they get there and they're like, hello, sir. Nice to meet you. Okay, cool. And that's it. And she's just so upset. And it's just like this story that represents, there was a seed of a happy memory with her mom. She'll take someone else's mom. That's not even her mother-in-law anymore. It's her ex-mother-in-law. But she's like, I took that recipe. She takes love where she can get it. Slowly, I began to find my own sense of self, which was like trudging through mud after being programmed for so long by an unhealthy woman.
Christian's parents showed up in all the ways that my parents could not. When we got engaged, we sent his parents a photo of us together, me proudly wearing a beautiful square diamond ring as our announcement. They called as soon as they opened it. She ends up calling her parents and they're just like, oh, okay. And then they decide to get married in New York. And her mom goes, well, if you get married in New York, I can't come. So that's why you're doing it in New York. And she's like, no, if she got married in Florida, I don't think her mom would come either.
Yeah, and that's what her therapist says too. She goes, you have to think like if she couldn't walk, would you ask her to leave the house?
Yeah.
However, when she first tells her about Christian, her mom goes, he's not the one. I'll tell you when you found the one.
So her and Christian got married. They had a very beautiful relationship. They had a beautiful wedding.
At Prospect Park Boathouse.
Yeah, I mean, what's more beautiful than that?
Recently, my husband, Ted, smiled as he walked into the kitchen. What are you two gals up to? He asked. Oh, just making memories.
When she was making cookies with her baby.
That man, Ted, no longer her husband.
Yeah, but I will say with Christian, I feel like I've made fun of her a little bit for these short marriages, but none of them feel like mistakes to me. Like you can see how each one of them like helped her grow into the next version of herself. Mm-hmm. The way that like
I think she was only married to Christian for like a year.
Yeah, but in that year, she like did a lot of detangling and like uncomfortable shit regarding her parents. Like I don't think that she would have emerged from that cocoon version of herself without Christian's family. And then with Ted,
I will say you don't have to marry somebody to like.
That's not always true. With her family, that's not true.
So she has a chapter called Failed Projects, and she's like, cheesy muffins, a crocheted cardigan, my first marriage.
And so now she gets into exactly how that fell apart. And it wasn't even contentious. They're still good friends. They just realized they weren't in love with each other.
I wonder how true this is. She gets a call from the agent being like, by the way, page 6 is saying you had an affair. And she's like so upset. It's hard to like read this story. She's like, can you imagine someone accusing me of having an affair? And I'm like, oh, can I, Sutton?
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
I will say though, her and Christian, because I was looking at their Wikipedias, because I was like, who's Christian? They have worked together a good amount since.
Okay.
In like not particularly necessary ways. Like he'll like come be a guest star on one of her shows or something.
She says that they were more like roommates than anything else.
Yeah. Because it's not like, oh, this is a big opportunity for them both. How could they not work together? It feels like she like brings him in as a guest star on her shows and stuff. Like I think that they're cool.
This is my favorite line in the whole book. The titillating tabloid story insinuated that I had cheated on Christian and pinned our failed marriage on me. I felt like my purse had been dumped on the sidewalk. As I headed into rehearsal for Shrek the Musical, my mind was racing.
She's just so like sweet and earnest and like, I don't know, I felt like my purse had been dumped on the sidewalk. Worse shit has happened. That's not, I've dumped my purse on the sidewalk many a time.
Going to Shrek the Musical is so funny to me.
Dude, I want to see Shrek the Musical so bad.
Do it.
I think I'm going to.
One of my goals for this spring, do you want to hear it right now, is to go get Rush tickets.
Oh, to go wait in the line?
Because I think I'm going to do it on a day I have to read for this podcast anyway. I think Monday is the one day they take off. Whatever, I'll head up there with my book in tow. Why not, right?
Why not?
So she says, listen, what happened between me and Christian is between me and Christian, and it's going to stay that way. I'll say this, though. As shortly after we got married, we realized that we both wanted more from our relationship. We were best friends and frankly more like roommates than partners. Nobody cheated. The separation was actually fueled by love. You know when you love somebody? I actually heard a comic said this to me a year ago and it made me laugh. He said,
oh my God, when you're so in love that you can't be together.
Yeah, he told me like we had to break up because we were just too in love. And I go, don't I know that? You know, when you're like so in love that actually it makes sense to not date.
Yeah.
They tried couples therapy and I wanted to fight for our marriage, but Christian had already fallen for someone else. When I watched him take his wedding ring off in one session, I knew it was really over. Okay.
Well, that explains a lot.
Okay. No one cheated. But you know when somebody's in love and in couples therapy says, I won't date you anymore because I love someone else? Mac, if you're listening, that to me would be cheating. So you can't do that either.
Everyone has a different definition of the word cheating.
Maybe that was the definition she used with Hugh. She's like, I didn't cheat on you. I just fell in love with somebody else and planned to leave you for him.
She auditions for another play with Zach Braff, and also Bobby Cannavale is in it. And so she starts dating him.
I love that in this book. She's like, Zach Braff is the star of this play she's in, and he does not get acknowledged whatsoever. I actually saw Bobby Cannavale originate a role recently.
Did you love it?
I loved it. It was one of the favorite things I saw last year. It was called, it had a really bad name, I'll be honest, because I can never remember what it's called, but it was like Sondheim's last play that he was working on.
Oh, you said it fell apart of it in the second half.
Yeah, and it was so funny because I remember being like, was I too stupid to get what happened in the second half? And then I looked it up, and sure enough, he had died without figuring out how to fix the second half. And let me tell you, the guys who took a whack at it, they couldn't figure it out either. But the first half was one of the best things I ever saw. It was so truly funny. It was called like As It Goes or Where From Square One, Back From Here. I don't know. Anyway, I saw it at the Shed. I highly recommend if you're coming to New York City. I think some of the best things I've ever seen have been at the Shed. That being said, I did not like their most recent installation.
Oh, that's when you went to the day we went to the concert?
Yeah, that one kind of sucked and was overpriced.
Anyway, Bobby Cannavale.
He was in it and he was so funny.
He's not overpriced.
No. Anyway, you know who else liked him? Sutton.
Yes.
They hot and heavy, getting real sexy with it. I think it's the first time a man had ever touched this lady proper.
So they have this great relationship for about a year. And then he has a kid from a previous relationship and says, I don't want any more children. And this not even being a conversation with her kind of sends her over the edge. And then their relationship just starts to fizzle as they realize there's no future here. Bobby was starting to pull away. I could feel it. Our hot and sexy romance was beginning to fizzle. Gone were the afternoon romps and stolen glances. She tries to keep it alive for a little bit and considers passing a job up to spend more time with him. And then they were like, no, you're in a contract. And then she realizes it was for the best. So they break up.
Yeah, everybody in her life is like, hey, you're taking care of him a lot. Is he taking care of you? And she's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. I'll just quit everything to be with him.
He like had surgery and she was doing 8 shows a week as the starring role in a play and then also like nursing him back to health. And they were like, right.
But you're pretty busy now.
Is there a nurse though?
That fall, I was offered the part of Reno Sweeney in Anything Goes. She credits her agent with giving the idea to the people bringing it back, being like, Reno's never been a dancing character, but Sutton, she can sing and she can dance. She can dance and she can sing at the same time.
And Reno is the character that made her first want to go into musical theater because she saw Patti LuPone do one of her songs and was like so blown away. It's her Roman Empire. It altered her brain chemistry.
It is so funny to have a man who doesn't want to spend that much time with you. And you were like, but what if I quit my job? Would that be helpful? Like, no, if anything, do more job. He wants to see less of you.
Maybe this relationship could really work if you guys stop seeing each other.
So basically, she was like, I'm doing an ultimatum. Are we together or not? And he's like, I guess not then, huh? And she's like, what? Oh. His last words to me were, I just want to be alone. And then he left. I was devastated. I thought that Bobby was the missing piece, but he wasn't. He taught me something, though, that I needed to find that piece in and for myself. That meant doing it alone.
So now she's trying to tackle this role in Anything Goes, and she's having a really hard time with it because she just doesn't have like the sexual confidence of Reno. She ends up going to an acting coach to try to like pull this role out of her because she knows that it's not going well. No one's really telling her except Joel Grey.
Shout out to Joel Grey, father of former memoirist Jennifer Grey, who I just saw in A Real Pain.
She was great.
Did you know she was in that?
Yeah.
Did you know the whole time?
I knew before I saw it. I wouldn't have recognized her if I didn't already know.
The credits hit and I went, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. I know all about how you feel life wasn't good enough to you.
Do you feel that this was good?
Anyway, so Joel Grey's like, do you have any better ideas about how to do this?
So she goes to an acting coach, and with this acting coach, she kind of does like therapy about her character.
It's funny. She goes to like a voice coach and she's like, but actually they were a voice coach, secretly a therapist. And then she goes to an acting coach. She's like, actually they were an acting coach, but secretly a therapist. And I'm like, I guess everything on earth is therapy. This podcast, therapy.
Ain't that the truth? I feel therapized when I'm done. So she realizes that she just hates the character. She says that these bawdy women make her uncomfortable because she's so afraid of her own sexuality that seeing people who like own the room in that way. Like she spent so much time trying to make herself smaller that seeing someone who walks in unapologetic and themselves like makes her uncomfortable. And she is afraid. She hates those people
because she's jealous.
Because she's jealous of them. And so once she understands where she's like pulling away from this character, she's able to nail it.
But what she really understands about Reno is that her and Reno are the same. They both just want to be loved unconditionally. They're just coming at it from different viewpoints. Like Sutton is like coming at it apologetically, and Reno is coming at it with a facade. And once she realized that Reno's just as insecure as she is,
boy, oh boy, does she kick ass. And in the process, she becomes better friends with Patti LuPone. It's not every day your idol comes to see you perform.
She gets really good reviews, but she didn't read them. I was excited and relieved, but I also realized that it didn't matter. I had this strange sense of peace about all of it because I had found her in the nick of fucking time. She like feels like she finally nails the character opening night, where she shows up already confident.
And inspired by this character and by Patti LuPone, she makes a big collage that says badass.
Then she interviews Patti LuPone, and it turns out that Patti LuPone's a lot like her. She says, off the stage, I can be very insecure and I'm a bit meek and easy to push over, but I just know that when I'm on stage, it's mine. And she goes, I can feel nervous then too, that like maybe I won't give enough. And she goes, I have a gift. It's my job to give this gift to the world.
Her mantra in terms of like giving herself permission is, I've worked my entire life to be at this moment. I can allow this to be good. That's pretty good.
And then her mantra as a performer is, I always think about what Walter Bobby said to me at the encores at City Center. After I came back from a vocal cord operation, he said, you've got it. Now give it away.
Oof.
That's what we're supposed to do as performers. There's no holding back. Maybe that's my mantra. Give it away.
Wow.
Patti LuPone, there's something there.
Oh, and I liked this advice to young performers from Patti LuPone. They should know their craft, starting with that it is a craft. It takes not only the craft itself, but its history. Who came before you? Why are you here? Why are we here? And what are we doing? I think that's just something really clutch to keep in mind. In 2011, her mom starts being a lot nicer. Right after she wins the Tony for Anything Goes, she finds out that her mom has been on Xanax, which is really helping her offer more grace as a person.
Her dad actually was prescribed the Xanax to help him quit smoking, but her mom starts taking it. And I guess a couple times her mom had said something like, I should probably see someone professionally. I think something's wrong with me, but she never got around to it. But the Xanax makes her nicer.
And around this time, Sutton also goes in to do Bunheads. So she had gotten a new agent, and she thought her agent was just trying to impress her with meetings. And so she had a meeting with Amy Sherman-Palladino, but then Amy Sherman-Palladino was like, guess what? I have a role for you. You guys, you have to watch Bunheads. I loved that show.
Which starred
Kelly Bishop.
Yeah, it starred former memoirist Kelly Bishop.
Well, coming off Anything Goes and her divorce and her breakup from Bobby Cannavale, she feels like at this very transitional point. And so that is kind of why Bunheads was so important to her. She like really infuses a lot of meaning into the timing of all of her roles. And Bunheads is about a woman who is in a very transitional period in her life, and a dancer and a performer. And so she becomes one with Michelle.
I have to say something. I was looking up the ads, like the billboard ads for Bunheads. I cannot believe, like, when do you think that show came out? 2014?
Yeah, maybe a little earlier.
2011. The photos, I'm like, who took these? They look like they're for MySpace for like your friends' perform. Like they are so low quality. She's there in like her jean shorts and her tank top. I'm like, did she do her own hair? Like I know she did it, but there's something about the pre-full glam era of television. Look up the billboards for Bunheads. I've never seen something more DIY looking. They just look like so shoddily done and so of a time. The outfits are like so TJ Maxx.
I miss it so much though. Like, why does no one have frizzy hair on TV anymore? I can't live like this.
Bring back Kate Hudson and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. The great thing about Bunheads was that her mom could actually watch it every week because it came to her TV, even though she couldn't understand how fast they talked. She emailed, loved Bunheads tonight, loved seeing you and Hunter working together and singing too. Love you, Mom. By then, my mom and Hunter were speaking again. After Urinetown, he did a Broadway production of Little Shop of Horrors that had a soft opening in Coral Gables, and my parents decided to get tickets. My brother said they spent the afternoon together as if nothing had happened. It was like they had an unspoken truce to bury the hatchet. Thanks to therapy, I realized that was their story, not mine. I quit right before I moved to Los Angeles because I finally accepted my mother and stopped trying to change her, and it seemed that she had finally accepted me.
She's doing a lot of letting go and letting God, and she's also quit dating, and one of her friends is like, oh, but what if I introduce you to my friend Ted? And so then she meets this guy Ted, and their relationship is just easy breezy. And then just as her and Ted are like really starting to fall in love and they're finishing up Bunheads, she gets a call that her mom is sick.
And normally she would not get this call unless something was serious. Her dad calls her and she's like, my mom is very private about her health. Like once it turned out she had some surgery and I didn't find out for years because nobody was allowed to talk. So I knew if he was calling me, then it was bad.
It turns out she had cancer that has spread pretty much all over her body. And now there are several tumors in her brain as well.
So she gets there and sure enough, her mom is like furious that she has been told and that she's in the hospital. She's like, it reminded me of how Dada had acted, and she had come to this point where she realized there's acceptance without expectations, and that allowed me to stay in a relationship with my mother. Still, in that moment, I thought, wow, all that energy and anger is actually impressive. She still got it. The difference was that she couldn't hurt me with it anymore. And so after many years of therapy and insisting on staying in her life despite her terrible behavior, I was beginning to see how it was her facade. The kind emails over the past 2 years had given me a glimpse of who she could be and what our relationship might become.
So she spends the next several weeks in Florida with her parents and then going back and forth.
Hunter comes down and they also go to the house, and her room is like completely blacked out with garbage bags and it's disgusting. And it turned out she had fallen and broken her hip and been bedbound, and like her mattress was completely soiled and it was like full of cigarette smoke. They had to get it deep cleaned, and she's like furious with her dad because she's like, how did you let it get this bad? It turned out the cancer that had metastasized had started as a melanoma on her thigh. That was like, the nurse was like, I've never seen something this big. I don't know how you would let it get this big without coming into the hospital. But she's like, he would have had to physically drag her here.
Yeah. And he just didn't know. They slept in separate rooms. Like he didn't know what was happening on her legs.
Her mom has just had the surgery to remove the melanoma from her leg. They're going to give her chemo, but it's a process. She has a few days in LA.
Ted proposes.
I think I said, of course, but I was caught so off guard and frankly confused. I knew I wanted to marry him and I was such an emotional wreck. All I could think as he tried to slip the tiny platinum and diamond heirloom on my finger was, why is he doing this now? And she's like, I look back and I realized he was doing it because he wanted to like prove he'd be there for me during the worst of times. He wanted to give me the stability. He wanted to like get this done before my mom passed away so that he could tell her. But I got that it's a lot. Maybe with action. I guess this is an action, but like maybe by just showing up.
Yeah. She ends up introducing him to her parents, which is something that's very scary for her, but they're pretty chill about it.
So her mom then has to be put on life support and is dying. She gets pneumonia in her lungs and her lungs have cancer, so there's nothing they can really do. Sutton starts crocheting morning owls, mourning owls. They have a doctor who very rudely is like, why aren't you taking this lady off life support? What's the deal here?
Yeah. I guess the problem is there's a lot more doctors with like a horrible bedside manner than not.
So she has to go home and do a performance at the Carlisle. She's got a 3-week run. She's up there and she gets the call between her like early and late performances that her mom has started to die. So she gets on a plane the next day, shows up with Hunter, and her mom passes away.
She has a funeral for her mom. This part was very touching to me. Stephanie took 3 planes to fly across the country from Los Angeles so she could be there. Michael Rafter, someone who she like does music stuff with, was there, and she didn't even know he was coming. And I do feel like these people showing up and taking such measures to get to Florida for this funeral is such a, like a lovely, you're not your mom sitch.
Hunter gives like an honest eulogy. Then I thought of Hunter's eulogy and how all we have left are stories. And I realized how this blanket is the story of my daughter's grandmother, one I'm still trying to tell. So she's like, I'm going to finish this for her.
Kind of the silver lining of her mom dying is that her dad is able to exist in the world again.
I lost my mom, but I saw the possibility of getting my father back in the wake of my mother's death. The man who loved to plant marigolds and barbecue burgers and make tomato sandwiches. Oh, how I had missed him. They all have like a Christmas together for the first time. I find it very sweet that her and her brother were able to stay so close, even though they came from such a toxic background.
Yeah. And then she does this role called Violet, and it helps her really peel back the layers of her own sadness.
I thought this was such an interesting premise for a play. It's about a young woman from North Carolina traveling by bus to see a preacher in Tennessee. She has a deep scar that slashes down her face, and she thinks the preacher is going to be able to like heal it.
Her and Ted get married, and they do like a really small wedding. Her dad and her brother walk her down the aisle. She's feeling happy.
Violet was an unbelievable gift. In every single performance, I excavated in another layer of the pain and sadness and darkness I had been holding inside for 38 years. I mourned my mom, not only her death, but the loss of a mother I didn't have for so many years, and I forgave her.
So then her and Ted start thinking about having kids. She is like 38, and they realize if they want to do it, they really should start thinking about it.
She also starts thinking about this weird thing her mom said to her once out of nowhere. It felt so strange to suddenly want to be a mother so badly. For most of my life, my career had been my focus. Plus, my mom had made a prediction when I was in my early 20s that now haunted me. Sutton, you won't have children, she said. Hunter will.
Okay. So she's kind of just casually trying to have a baby, and she realizes that her other friends who have conceived have like really put some research and time into it. So she decides to focus all of her energy on getting pregnant. She starts doing a lot of fertility drawings.
And somebody recommends for her a fertility doctor in Pasadena, and she goes and she wants to do IUI because that had worked for her friend. And he is like kind of a huge dick to her, and he's very cold and he's not very nice. And he goes, "You don't have time to waste. You need to do IVF." And she's kind of like, "Why won't he talk it through me? Like I'm a very vulnerable person. Why is he just like being so grunty and mean?"
I was now part of this strange club. For someone who had been so ambivalent about having children, I was surprised by what I was willing to do to become a mother. So they end up doing IVF, and they do a round, and she gets pregnant, but it's not viable.
So she had been told she should wait because like her body needed a chance to heal from the egg retrieval, but she had a work schedule that was pretty tight, and she's like, "I don't have time to come back to LA in a month, so let's just do it now." She gets pregnant, and unfortunately, flying to New York, she has a miscarriage. So they test the other 3 embryos, and unfortunately, they all come up with genetic defects. So she has to do another round of egg retrieval.
So she does another round, and she gets another few embryos, and they implant 2. And again,
she goes to Japan to do a concert, and she loses them in Japan.
Yeah. And so then she decides that she wants to try adoption.
She is on the set of Younger.
Yeah. So her best friend, Stephanie, is adopted. Her other best friend, who like used to be her dresser on Broadway, and now they do all these art shows together, he was adopted.
And also, she's working with Peter Herman, who is the wife of Mariska Hargitay.
Yes. He is Mariska's wife.
And they have 2 adopted daughters. And he's like, "If you ever want advice on the process, I can totally help you." So in Japan, they decide, let's just adopt.
This process ends up going so fast because she's also sad because her first implantation, I don't know if that's what they call it, that ended up resulting in a miscarriage would have been like right around the time that her other best friend also got pregnant. And she's like, "Oh, we would have had like babies together." They end up going through the whole adoption process and having a baby that is 2 months younger than her best friend's baby. So it was like less than a year. And now they have a baby named Emily Dale. She was so anxious about adoption because anything can happen, and she didn't want to jinx the process. So there was a lot of stuff that she was just afraid to buy. She was afraid to finish crocheting her baby blanket. She was afraid that if she told too many people, something would go wrong.
She went right back to work. They both went right back to work, but she made the little baby a blanket that says badass on it. And she, for the first time, considered making her own crochet patterns, which kind of represents the way that in life, she's like, "Oh, maybe you can make your own pattern."
Yeah, she ends up making 10 crochet patterns in like her baby's first year, I think.
And then she pitches this idea for a book, and it turns out because she was on a publishing show, lots of people loved and publishing knew about her. And there was 13 different meetings and agents, and she worked on this. And now her new crafting project was book crafting.
It's very interesting. I think this is the first book we've read where she like talks about creating this book with a co-writer.
Yeah, because she talks about how she would like send in her chapters, and the editor would be like, "We'll explain this, let's do this." And then halfway through, she goes, "I want to actually do a book of crafts and like explain my life through the view of different crafts I was making at the different time," which I think could have been interesting. I don't think it was 100% pulled off. I feel the crafts became at best kind of like a nuisance.
See, I feel that they were more of a crutch.
I found them to be an afterthought often, because the weird thing about Sutton Foster is she has a story about her mother.
Yeah.
Her life story is about her relationship to her mother, and it is actually quite interesting and involved. And I don't know, it just was like kind of just a thing that was also there. It was like a book with pictures.
I feel like she used crafting to like explain the depth of her emotion instead of like having depth of emotion. Like she would explain the layers and the intricacies and the intertwinedness through yarn.
I made a collage called Badass because at the time I needed to find my own inner badass.
Honestly, I feel like there were a lot of things where like she's honest that she was feeling a lot, but she couldn't explain what she was feeling. So she says like the concentric circles represented family DNA. And you're like, okay.
It's funny to have a book explain a craft, explain a life.
Yeah.
But It is so crazy to think that she is like such a star in her world. And she did have these parents that were like insane.
I mean, her story is really interesting. I love Younger. She says that set was great. Everyone was really close. They had amazing chemistry. And that's cool.
Any final thoughts?
My final thought is I really like Sutton Foster. I don't think this is a book that I like would read again, but I think that if you are a theater person, I would be like, oh, for sure, grab that.
Yeah, it was a much better book than a lot of worse books.
Yeah.
Do you think you'd be friends with her? I truly don't know. Because on the one hand, she does seem so earnest and kind of corny. But on the other hand, I'm like, I don't know. I have some earnest, corny people in my life. I feel like she's so authentic and sweet. Maybe she'd be fun to hang out with.
Okay, this is going to be corny. I don't know that we would get along, but I think that the people who are close to her are like very lucky to have her in their life.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a beautiful way to put it.
I guess I would have like 2 worm teenies with her. I'd be very interested, but not like too
I would
interested.
love to throw a bachelorette with her.
Yes.
I would love for her to be
my God.
like my best friend's sister-in-law.
I also kind of want to learn how to crochet.
I agree. I should have something to do with my hands.
And how fertile would you say the soil was?
It's weird because I do believe she told you everything there is to tell, but it's just, it's hard to write a beautiful book.
Yeah.
It's not beautiful.
No.
I'd give it a 3.5 out of 10. I mean, 3.5 out of 5.
It is like potentially fertile soil that like needs to be treated differently.
Yeah.
Anyway, love you guys.